Yeah, how do I get started, or where do I get started, or whatever? Right, guys, welcome to the Dear Diary podcast. So that is DEER, not DEAR. The animal, that is. My name is Jody Crane, and I will be hosting this podcast. This podcast, there's three kind of points or three pillars as such that I want this podcast to be. Number one, it has to be educational. Anything that I will be talking about on this comes from real world experience. My own experience, my guests' experience. It has to be educational. That's the whole idea. The whole idea of this podcast was an idea of mine. When I first started deer stalking, there wasn't really much information, or people weren't really willing to divulge their own information with us, myself and my friend Ben, and we just found it really, really hard to get anywhere. So I said to myself a couple of weeks ago, Jesus, podcasts seem to be the main thing that's happening, and sure, why don't I create, or why don't I start a podcast for Ireland or the UK, or indeed whoever wants to bloody listen to the thing. Why don't I start, or why don't I do that? So that's just how it all started. So that it has to be educational. Second thing is, it has to be a bit of crack. Myself and my friend Ben, whenever he decides to come on and do these things, we'll be doing it. So it's basically two best friends talking, and our guests are going to be here as well. So we'll have a bit of banter with our guests as well. And the third thing is no bullshit. These podcasts are going to be literally, they're going to be honest. No bullshit. I don't really have to try and explain that. So that's what I'm hoping to do. So what is the podcast going to be about? Well, it's all in the name, really, deer stalking. But it's not only going to be focused on deer stalking. There's going to be other parameters that it's going to be covering. And I have just written down a few things that I'd like to cover. Of course, there's going to be more things as the podcast goes on, hopefully. But what I have down here is deer stalking, number one. Rough shoot, hunting, sustainable hunting, wild food, foraging. That's something that I have definitely. Foraging and bushcraft is something that I have spent a good portion of my adult life practicing. Growing up as a teenager, I used to spend copious hours in woods, practicing firelighting techniques, building shelters, carrying around manuals on wild fungi, medicinal plants, all that type of stuff. So I hope to get guests, or I hope to have a podcast dedicated to these subjects as well. But just for introductory reasons, I'll just run through these really quick. So sustainable hunting, wild food and foraging. Spearfishing. Spearfishing is something that I got into there myself 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, probably 2 years ago. And it's something that absolutely is after captivating me. It's basically hunting underwater, guys. The only difference is that it's it definitely is an awful lot more dangerous than hunting above water. When we spearfish, we dive down, one breath. No, we're not assisted by oxygen tanks. It's all free diving. We hold our breath. We breathe up. That's what we call breathe up. Breathe up is when you take in a couple of deep breaths, completely relax on the surface of the water, and then we dive down. We dive down to, now I'm not an expert in this, but my deepest dive is 12 meters. There's some guys out there, and indeed the world, that can dive 13, 40 meters, but I don't do that. That's just not me. But yeah, we dive down and we can either lie in wait and let the fish come to us, or we can move very, very slowly along the sea floor or through kelp or wherever it may be, looking for fish. So that is an excellent pastime, and I really, really, really would encourage people to try it. Without a doubt, it is an awesome sport. I'd also like to discuss products that we have used, myself, Ben, and indeed our guests. Obviously, we're not sponsored. This is brand new. This is just 100% raw. Products that we've used, that we've tested over the years, and that have kind of stayed by our side. Product testing, whatever. I also like to going to cover tracking dogs and dog handling, deer management and habitat loss. Guys, these are just a few things that I've just literally written down in the past half hour that I'd like to talk about. Of course, there's going to be more subjects to cover as well. So, look, I'm really hoping to get this out to the broader audience, and just go from there. Like if one person listens, so be it, well and good. Yeah, that's class. I'm not doing it for an audience. I'm just doing it because I'd like to give it a go, and I'd like to get any information I have inside my noggin out to people as well. So all well and good. Moving on, guests. Who am I going to have on? I have a few guys lined up, and they're eager enough to come in. They're not eager enough. They're eager to come in. They're eager to talk. One of them is going to be, he is an special forces sniper instructor, hunter-gatherer, and just an overall absolute machine. Not going to mention any names, but just to keep the suspense going, hopefully. Going to have a head chef of a restaurant down in Kerry who specialises in wild sustainable game meat. Very, very excited to have him on, because the two of us share an interest in foraging, wild camping, and indeed hunting. So really looking forward to have this guy on. Going to have a knife maker on. Going to discuss whatever it may be, how he got into it, different types of steels, the designs that he comes up with. This podcast is going to literally just be impromptu. Obviously, I'll have certain questions lined out and we'll just roll with it. We'll just roll with it from here. I'm going to have on a very close friend of mine, and Bavarian mountain hound training expert dog handler. He also specialises. I wouldn't say specialises, but he's also an expert in trophy measuring, and he is just a wealth of knowledge. An overall really good friend of mine, so really looking forward to having him on as well. Going to have a rough shooter and a gun dog breeder. You probably know him. Man down in Kerry. Really looking forward to having him on, because his posters go crack as well. So get him on, and we'll just see what the story is. Just again, like guys, it's going to be impromptu as well. It's going to be, a bit of banter as well. Spearfishing expert, somebody who knows an awful lot more on the subject than me. Has been on various channels on YouTube as well, and just he'll be able to talk more, and I think we'll be able to bounce off each other more on the subject as well, because it's quite hard when you're sitting down in a room and you're just surrounded by nobody to try and come out with a decent conversation to relay back to you. So look, again, when two people are talking, just the conversation tends to roll. So who am I? And what do I do? Well, I told you my name, or did I? I don't even know. My name is Jody Crane, and I have been shooting since I was first introduced to shooting, or hunting from the age of 6. My grandfather had chickens out the back of his house down in Wexford, and the rats used to be an awful problem. So they obviously kept my dad and my granddad and brothers and aunties in the house, in the household. There was always a shotgun there as well. They used the shotgun to basically provide food for the table and provide income, because at the time when my dad was growing up, there was a bounty on foxes for their pelts, and I think Dad was getting, he told me before, they were getting like £25 a pelt. So that was the shotgun was used for used as a valuable form of income for the family. But back to my first memory. My first memory was seeing a rat going along the ditch over into the chicken coop. So you ran in, and my dad was in there with my granddad. He said, "Take the shotgun." So my dad took out the shotgun. And at the time, Grandad had sire horses. I think that's Shire horses. Shire? These huge horses anyway. The Budweiser horses, from what I know what they are, or recall, they are. And he had bales, little square bales. I remember sneaking through this maze of square bales to try and get in position to shoot the rat. And sure, I was behind my dad, and the adrenaline was pumping, and we eventually got into a shooting position, and Dad took the rat out, and from that day on I was hooked. So growing up, when I was probably, I don't know, I can't remember what age Dad got a shotgun, but before that, I went off shooting with Dad and my Uncle Tony and whatever, like, and just down in Wexford of a weekend. And eventually Dad got his own shotgun and kept it and had it in our own house. And we used to go off with friends of ours down from Wexford and Carlow. Every single weekend we were out. And of course, being the youngest and being the beginner, I had to carry all of the pheasants. I remember my shoulders and arms used to be broke off me carrying the pheasants. But it was all a learning curve. You were doing that because that's just how it was. Like, that's just how the apprentice done it. Like, you were basically doing that. And eventually, over, I think it was year 2 of doing it, or year 3 of doing it, I was allowed use one of their shotguns, obviously behind them, and I just progressed from there. So at 14 I held my own shotgun license. 16 I got my first centerfire rifle. It was a Remington 700 VSSF in 220 Swift, and I used to shoot an awful amount of foxes with that. I was out every single evening shooting foxes, especially during the winter or whatever. And a quick note on that, I remember the pheasants around the area that I grew up in Dunbell, in Kilkenny. The pheasant population was extremely healthy. I remember putting up hen pheasants off of net. Well, not me. My dogs used to put hen pheasant up after hen pheasant. All the eggs, like in the corn, in the barley. Like, I never remembered any. I never remembered as much pheasants growing up as that, and that was because I was shooting every single day. I was shooting foxes in the evenings. I was shooting, vermin. Never used to trap them though. I didn't have a Larson trap. I always used to shoot them, shooting grey crows and magpies and whatever, just constantly at it. And then I progressed onto deer stalking. and I've been doing that for a long time. Not only have I been deer stalking, not only have I been like gathering like experience, but I also have went on and educated myself. I've done a DSC1 and I have a DSC2 qualification to my name as well. These things, some guys might laugh at them, some guys might say you don't need them, this, that and the other. That's their opinion. I'm not really worried about other people's opinions, to be totally honest. I'm just talking for myself. They are important. They educate you more so than what you can by a book. They don't, I'll rephrase this. They educate you more than what maybe 5 or 10 people can. They go through absolutely everything. They go through deer management, biodiversity. They go through impact assessments. They go through all these things that just give you a broader picture of deer and the importance of what we're doing as a deer stalker. Do you know? Not only are we shooting deer to protect crops for farmers or whatever, but we're actually also we're also improving the biodiversity of the ground as well. So I'm not going to get into that. Maybe for another day. So yeah, they're obviously important as well. I also hold an advanced deer management certificate that I've went to a lot of time and effort to get. So yeah, and that's going to be another thing as well, qualifications or whatever. I'm also a qualified mountain leader. That took a while to get. So the outdoors, so what I'm basically trying to relay back to you is that I'm an outdoorsman, true and true. Of course, you know, spearfishing is one of my fortes, and whatever, deer stalking and bushcraft. So yeah, that's just kind of enough, and that's enough about me. So as regards the next podcast, I'm going to see how this goes. Again, I'm just going to keep doing them. Keep them going. Whether or not they're going to be a weekly thing or a fortnightly thing, I'm going to find out. All of these things, all of this is absolutely 100% new to me. As regards sound editing, all that type of stuff, again, it's new. So, of course, once I get familiar with it, I'll get faster with it, and then we can go on from there, and then I can decide whether or not it's going to be a weekly thing or a fortnightly thing. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting it started, guys. I really am. So look, that's just a short cap on this podcast. It's called the Deer Diary Podcast. Again, that could change as well. We'll just see how things goes. But look, guys, thanks very much for tuning in, and I look forward to talking on the next one. Thank you very much.